Welcome back to the Keiser Report. Time now to turn to futurist, IT architect, and free software advocate, Arjen Kamphuis. Arjen, welcome to the Keiser Report.
Hi, great to be here.
Okay, now before we get started, maybe just a brief synopsis of what is an IT architect.
An IT architect is sort of what an architect is to a builder. So where maybe programmers or system administrators are the people who, make the things and keep it running, do the maintenance. The IT architect thinks about sort of the major rules and structures of how big IT systems need to work, need to function, how it all hangs together.
Fair enough. Now, tell us about the NSA. They have re-architected the internet. That is, what should the internet look like compared to how it looks in a post-surveillance rewiring? So you're an IT architect, you look at how the various structure of the internet is pieced together, and yet here's the NSA, they've re-architected the internet. What does that mean? They've
very purposefully changed some of the structures, the security of the protocols that we all use for something like electronic banking or for securely sending our emails. They've weakened those protocols so that they could do more spying. And I think into the future we need to take the internet more back to its origins, where it's fully decentralized, where there are very few central infrastructures. We don't stick all our services in a few big companies that are running under the Patriot Act. So it's decentralization. That's the core thing, I think, of the future of the internet, if we want to have a free internet.
Now, before the NSA started plugging their systems into the internet was a fairly robust system, and it was growing really on its own accord, and it was being helped along by the free software movement and by engineers like the Linux movement who had come up with software that was superior to the commercial software. And now you've got the NSA. It's almost as if you've got a bridge that they're suddenly, they are picking away at that bridge, trying to take out bits and pieces for themselves. They think some of the concrete might be valuable or what have you, but they're destroying the integrity and the robustness of the structure, correct?
Yeah. No, it's their purposeful weakening of security protocols has literally endangered everybody who is doing anything on the internet. So it's made us more vulnerable to all kinds of low and mid-level cybercrime, and it's made us all less private. And I don't think most people really sort of have gotten how bad this really is.
Okay, now some people have. You've got Brazil. Brazil says they want to create a separate internet. So now, is this possible, number one? And number two, are we going to have a balkanization of the internet, where you've got different territories are going to split off and they're going to try to recreate the internet? But is that going to work?
I think there'll be a heavy price to pay for not having, one integrated system in terms of economics and convenience. But I think many countries will see that it is worth to put up some fencing, because otherwise basically you allow a handful of countries to do industrial spying on an industrial scale all the time, and violate the privacy of all your citizens all the time. And luckily there are still some governments, like the government of Brazil, who seem to think that actually it's their job to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so they're not going to cut themselves off from the internet, but they're going to make sure that they control as big a part of the infrastructure, from the fiber optic cables up to the software and everything in between, as possible. So it's not going to be a separate system, but it's more about who controls what pieces. And if you control more of the pieces, then you can prevent at least some of the spying.
When you talk about the internet and you talk about the fact that every time you add more users onto the internet, the value of the network expands almost exponentially. The so-called network effect, or network externalities that occur when the value is actually increased, the more people use it. It almost is a repudiation of the diminishing returns theory in economics. So now you've got a situation where NSA is plugging away at destroying the internet and its network effect, and all these companies that are tied to this network effect, the Google, Amazon, eBay, they're highly leveraged on this network effect, the Metcalfe's law. You can look that up on Google and get a deeper understanding of what this means. So if the NSA is going to start to de-leverage and de-architect and destroy the internet, this entire global economy based on IT starts to collapse. And to give you an idea of some of the damage they're doing here, by some estimates, U.S. corporations are already losing $180 billion in business as the rest of the world divorces itself from this crappy NSA virus junk. Right? Your thoughts?
No, I think absolutely right. Well, it's not necessarily that the total value, to the global society of information technology is going to go down, but certainly the US economy is going to be hurt very, very badly by this in the long term. Already, Germany just last week announced that they are basically going to rebuild and re-engineer all the critical software that they need to run their country and their industry. So that means that they will stop buying lots of American software, which is what most Western countries do. So my home country, the Netherlands, buys about 10 billion euros worth of US software on a yearly basis. So that's something like several hundred euros per citizen every year. Now, translate that to all of the Western world, and that's the kind of money we're talking about. And we've been paying that year on year on year on year to companies like Microsoft and Apple and Google. And now, of course, everybody starts saying, oh, we need to actually do this ourselves if we want to be safe and secure and if we want to be sovereign. And oh, by the way, great, there's all this free software out there that actually mostly already does what we need to, and we just need to build the last 5% or 2% in the usability. And then we can run on that fine. And so now the 10 billion that we used to spend on foreign software licenses, we spend it on hiring local programmers and support people and educators to make sure we can work this.
Right, so you have a couple of companies, let's say Microsoft or Oracle, that are entrenched oligopolists or monopolists. And the countries that you speak of, when it comes to deciding where to spend their infrastructure dollar, sometimes just through sheer inertia, they end up signing up again to the latest Microsoft or paying Oracle some more money. But you're saying that this is now a wake-up call where these countries and these companies are saying, you know what? We can use free software. It's more robust. Obviously, it's cheaper and it works better. Why don't we just dump these clowns in the U.S. and start from scratch?
Yeah, exactly. And I think certainly in Germany, some of the revelations that have come out over the last half year have really waken up a couple of people that, yes, there's going to be some work and pain involved in switching. People have to relearn a few things like that. But already there are places in Germany where they've proven, and also in France, by the way, where they've proven that this is possible. It takes a bit of time, it takes a bit of effort. But actually, after a few years, nobody really remembers even the past, and you're all fine. And now you're saving tons and tons of money. I mean, if it's 10 billion for a tiny country like the Netherlands, imagine what it is for all of Europe.
All right, now you mentioned earlier the word protocol, and you talked about the various protocols in the world. And this brings us to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is a protocol, just like HTTP is a protocol. So before people start to speculate about the price of Bitcoin or about the mysterious origins of Bitcoin, let's talk a little bit about, first of all, for the viewers out there that are just coming to this, what is a protocol? In information terms, what is that? What is a protocol?
A protocol in its basics is just a set of agreements on how two entities, whether they be humans or systems, communicate. So our protocol right now is that we're speaking English, which is great. And we can both use English, and that's the nice thing about something like English or HTTP.
Okay, stop. So when I go to the internet, I go to a web address, I go HTTP //address.com. And everyone has become totally normalized. They don't really look at that HTTP bit anymore. But that was the protocol that created the ability to do internet. That was the big leap. So now
make it usable.
Let's flash forward to Bitcoin. Bitcoin, yes, it's a currency. Yes, it's a means of moving money around the internet. But first and foremost, it's a protocol that is, so speak about the Bitcoin protocol.
So it's a set of mathematical agreements where all the participants in the global Bitcoin network of computers, all the computers are checking each other's ledgers against each other all the time. And as long as everybody agrees that this is the ledger, these are the transactions that everybody agrees on that works, then the system works beautifully. And there is, of course, a tiny, tiny chance that somebody will find a flaw in the cryptography. That's always a possibility. But obviously, by now, lots of people have tried. Nobody has found a hole yet. Otherwise, it would have collapsed very rapidly. So I think we have a goer here, something that really goes.
What is a petaflop?
A petaflop is a flop is floating point operation. It's an amount of mathematical work done by a processor. And a petaflop, it's a number of zeros. The exact number eludes me.
Okay.
Right
Now they say that the current Bitcoin protocol is hashing or solving for problems at a rate that's greater than 500 times the Cray supercomputers. And as part of this protocol and operating at some multiple of these petaflops. So I guess my question is, when people say that, well, anyone can start a cryptocurrency, that's not necessarily true, because the barrier to entry at this point with Bitcoin is that you've amassed the biggest decentralized computer network ever in history, bigger than. So talk about how big it is.
It is. I don't even know the exact numbers, and it might be quite hard to actually calculate that. But all the individual computers of all the participants, so these are the big mining rigs, but also smaller laptops maybe participating in a network. It's their total computing power that you would have to beat if you wanted to manipulate the system. And the numbers are now so great, as you said, that that's pretty much impossible. I mean, anybody can start a cryptocurrency, but unless you can amass this kind of level of participation, it won't compete with this. So, like with any currency, anybody can start a currency, right? But if other people don't believe that your currency is anything, then it's not going to go anywhere. So it's always about how many people join you in saying, okay, we will take this thing and use it to exchange value, and whether that's a Bitcoin or a lump of gold or a piece of paper made by the ECB.
Right, now, somebody could start a protocol for the internet to compete with HTTP.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't mean, it probably won't work, because HTTP has become the standard.
If it were an order of magnitude better, and you could promote it effectively, and you were to make it free, so HTTP and Bitcoin, like English, we can use the protocol without taking a license from Her Majesty the Queen or the ECB or the inventor of Bitcoin. He gave it to the world. Everybody can use it. Like Tim Berners-Lee gave the HTTP protocol to the world to use, and therefore we have a web. And so I think if you were to start something, you would have to give away the protocol for everybody to even participate in the process. If you want to set a new standard, you have to make it completely free for everybody to use. And then in order to be adapted on top of the existing thing, it needs to be an order of magnitude better. So if somebody comes up with something better, then that's great. I welcome the competition. That's only good. But yeah, people are only going to go there if it's an order of magnitude better than what we already have.
Right, now we've already seen this Bitcoin protocol completely change the way people look at money and look at the way money is sent around the world, and companies are now, talk about being put out of business. So the NSA we talked about is putting out of business a lot of technology companies needlessly now. But on the flip side, if you look at just how competition works, companies like maybe a Western Union, would you think that Bitcoin could really challenge a lot of these established companies?
Absolutely, in the way that MP3s is making CDs irrelevant. It's exactly the same.
In the music business?
Yeah.
Right, so
it's exactly the same
Bitcoin is kind of like MP3, Napster,
for the music business,
meets money.
Yes.
So the Ben Bernanke is going to go the way of a lot of these established acts like the Beatles that can't make money anymore, or some of these others, because of this new technology.
It's that change, yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it. So, Arjen Kamphuis, thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report.
Great to be here.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Arjen Kamphuis. If you'd like to get in touch, please tweet us at Keiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.